The media is finally waking up to the fact that Bumblin Biden's attempt at canceling Russia is indeed backfiring big time. In this video, we're going to take a look at Russia's latest retaliation against Western sanctions. We're going to see how those sanctions may end up inadvertently canceling the dollar as the world's reserve currency. And stick with the very end of this video when I'll reveal precisely why Bumblin Biden is getting increasingly humiliated on the world stage. You are not going to want to miss this. Greetings, everyone. Dr. Steve here with you. Great to be with you as always. I am your daily fake news antidote, so come on into your Patriot Professor's Den where I help you to think better so you can feel better in these crazy, insane, and turbulent times. So if you haven't done so, you know what to do. Make sure to smack that bell and subscribe button. Before we begin, let me ask you, gang, what are you willing to do in order to affect change in our nation? Well, at Patriot Switch, over 2 million patriots all across the country are making the switch to make sure that their purchases support patriotic companies. The neat thing here is that really it involves nothing outside your ordinary routine or the items that you already purchased, but the quality is second to none and pricing is comparable, if not better, in most cases, especially for a better quality product. You can make the switch today and start voting with your dollars to support companies that promote freedom. Learn more by visiting Patriot Switch in the description below. All right, gang, so let's dive right in here. We've, of course, been following the crisis in Ukraine, the Russian invasion, very closely over the last 4 weeks. And one of the frames that I thought was so important to accurately interpret what's really going on in all of this is actually a threefold frame of military battles, money battles, and media battles. Okay, so there's, of course, a mass military battle going on with the status of Russia's so-called special military operation going on in Ukraine and its various theaters, for example, in Mariupol and the Donbass region and Kiev and the like. But that's inextricably linked to an info war, a media battle, a battle of psyops that's trying to control the narrative of what's happening and thereby, at least ideally, inordinately influence what's actually happening on the battleground. So that's key for me as I'm analyzing the situation as a whole. So much of the narratives that are being pushed out there are not so much reflective of what's actually happening as they are attempts to influence what happens. So, for example, if you can convince enough Ukrainian troops that they're winning, that they're actually beating back the Russian army, right, then perhaps a particular Ukrainian unit or battalion won't be as inclined to surrender or retreat in the face of Russian adversity in their own particular sphere of battle. So you got military dynamics going on, you got media dynamics going on, and of course, intimately tied up in all of this, you got money, right? You got nothing less than a worldwide economic battlefield, which involves the massive and in many ways unprecedented level of international sanctions that have been leveled against Russia. So this is a battle that's being fought really on three fronts: military, money, and media. Or you can think of it as battles, banks, and brainwashing, as it were, you know, with each of these fronts being essential to understanding an overall assessment of what's actually happening. And what we're finding is that the media is increasingly recognizing that Russia is not just winning the military battle, which by all actual accounts appears that they are. They're doing so handedly. But also this very same media is recognizing that the barrage of economic sanctions attempting to cancel Russia are actually backfiring, and they're backfiring big time. Now, again, if you've been following this channel for some time, we've already been way ahead of the curve on this. We are not alone. I mentioned the astonishing coverage over at the Duran, the wonderful geopolitical YouTube channel there. They've got Rumble channels and the like. They've been front and center on this and recognize that these economic sanctions were literally tailor-made to backfire on the West, particularly on Europe. But now it looks like the legacy media is catching up here as they're beginning to openly admit that these sanctions, and again, we need to stress the enormity of these sanctions, this blitzkrieg of sanctions, it simply has not had the effect on Russia that the Western powers intended and are in fact boomeranging and adversely affecting the West and Western economies. Now, the latest example of this backfire is Russia's announcement that what they consider to be now, quote, unfriendly nations, all those nations that are currently sanctioning Russia, they are all now going to have to pay for Russian fuel and food exports in rubles, in the Russian currency. Now, this is gigantic because Europe gets about 40% of its natural gas from Russia. A lot of people don't realize, that Russia really is one of the major exporting superpowers on the planet. And this is why, contrary to what we've been hearing from the Bumblin Biden administration, Russian oil and gas exports continue rather unabated on the world market. The United States is still receiving Russian oil and gas exports, as is Europe. And they will continue to buy Russian oil and gas for the foreseeable future. They really have no other options, especially Bumblin Biden. Sleepy Joe begged Saudi Arabia to increase their oil production. Saudi Arabia told him to go and take a hike. He groveled before Venezuela to get them to supplement Russian oil. Maduro told Biden to take a hike. So now we have Russia demanding that all Western powers, U.S., Canada, EU, Australia, New Zealand, as well as Japan, Taiwan, Singapore, and South Korea, they all now have to ditch the USD, the US dollar, as their default international currency whenever they're doing business from now on with Russia. In other words, pay in rubles or freeze. Okay, that's your choice. Pay in rubles or starve, to the extent that you're dependent on Russian food and fertilizer. At the same time, Russia and, interestingly enough, Saudi Arabia are in talks with China to begin doing business in the yuan, the Chinese currency. And look at this from CNBC. An Indian rupee ruble trade agreement with Russia may, in fact, be just days away from being complete. This has been confirmed that India is indeed increasing its oil imports from Russia to boost. It's boosting its energy supplies at a significant discount on the world energy market, completely undermining Biden's attempts at trying to isolate Russia's economy on the international stage. But more than that, with Russia, China, and India converging together economically, we're witnessing more than 40% of the global population actually beginning to wean themselves from the USD. The US dollar is the default currency. And by the way, I just got to say, I think the big winner in all of this is actually India. Narendra Modi's Hindu nationalist India. Everybody wants India. A nation that has 20% of the world's population. Everybody is courting India at this moment. India is getting courted by the Quad, which is a rather loose economic alliance between the U.S., India, Australia, and Japan. In fact, Japan just tried to buy off India with a promise of $40 billion in investments if India put pressure on Russia. Prime Minister Modi wasn't playing. He didn't take the bribe. So they're getting courted by the Quad nations. They're getting courted by China. And, of course, they're getting courted by Russia. I mean, India is just in the sweet seat right now. Let's say that. But again, getting back to it, this attempt by Bumblin Biden and the idiots at the EU to cancel Russia, to isolate Russia, is simply backfiring. And again, this is because, as we've been reporting from day one of this conflict, Russia's been preparing for these sanctions for some time now in their deliberate effort to build what we're calling here the very first post-globalist civilization state, which in effect is a massive autonomous portion of the world that has all the political, economic, cultural, and militaristic resources needed to live completely independent of globalist structures and systems. And at the heart of this strategy is what analysts have called a, quote, fortress strategy for Russia, which means over the last several years, Russia has been intentionally seeking to sanction-proof their economy, and they've been doing this by building up their nation's international reserves away from the U.S. dollar, also away from the British sterling, interesting enough. They've been steadily increasing their economic alliance with China. Same with India. They've created parallel structures within their own nation so as to be self-sufficient in terms of food, medicine, and IT, internet technology. And when all is said and done, from the way things look, Bumblin Biden and the dolts in D.C., as well as the bullies in Brussels, they were all totally taken by surprise with all this. Woke Washington appears to have been, they've had no idea that Russia was doing anything like building a civilization state. And they were totally and completely unprepared to see this emancipation from the globalist world order like we're seeing, and having Russia institute its own parallel world. That's what's happening right before our very eyes, and that's precisely why this globalist attempt at canceling Russia is only, in the end, backfiring against the woke West. Now, before you go, you will definitely want to check out my latest video I just uploaded on new polls showing that Biden has officially become unelectable. You are not going to want to miss this, so make sure to click on the link, and I'll see you over there. God bless.